The New York Giants fall to the Dallas Cowboys 28-20. What went wrong besides the injuries? Well, I'm going to break it all down for you coming up next on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the LockedOn Giants podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the games start. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the LockedOn Giants podcast, part of the LockedOn Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and I'm going solo for this Giants game recap. The New York Giants losing to the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving by a score of 28-20. And if I had to summarize this game for you folks, it's one of missed opportunities. Now, the Giants coming into this game, we know they were banged up on the offensive line. We know that they were banged up in the defensive secondary. But yet somehow they were able to battle the Cowboys to a 13-7 lead at halftime. And in the second half, it just totally fell apart. So among the things I'm going to talk about on today's podcast are the missed opportunities, which, by the way, head coach Brian Daboll cited. And matter of fact, he was upset by some of these missed opportunities. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about some numbers that just, they got to fix these numbers, folks. And then we'll look at the Giants' playoff chances, which they're still alive, but we'll assess the health of the playoff chances of the New York Giants. So all that coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. All right, let's start off with the missed opportunities. All right, got to start off with and I just wrote down a few. I'm sure there are others that I'm missing here. Have to go back and look at the tape. But you had Darius Slayton slipping on a 2nd and 8 when he could have caught that pass, and that would have gone for a big gain. Now Slayton did come back later on in the game, and he had a 44-yard big catch. But you can't be slipping like that. You can't be losing your feet. You've got to make these catches. Special teams was an issue. Special teams, there were a couple of Jamie Gillian punts that were placed just right where you want them to be placed, but because the special teams could not get off their blocks and get down the field and down those punts inside of the 5-yard line, they rolled into the end zone for touchbacks. So that was not good. You had the now this was kind of questionable, this penalty, but I could see where it would be applicable. Tyree Phillips was flagged for being ineligible man downfield, which wiped out a touchdown reception by Isaiah Hodgins. You had the intentional grounding call, which knocked the Giants out of field goal range. There was that bad third quarter drop on 4th down. I think it was like 4th and 2, I want to say. Saquon Barkley, the ball hit him in the hands. Now, the throw was not very good, but it still hit him in the hands, and he's got to make that catch. Daniel Jones, by the way, had to make a better throw there. And that was also a play, by the way, that the Giants had 10 guys on the field. Okay, how does that happen? 10 guys were on the field. Unbelievable. But anyway, Saquon Barkley makes that catch, and you know what? He's got all kinds of daylight, and who knows how the complexion of the game would have changed in the second half. So that was a big, big turning point for the Giants. You have, now this was one of my favorites, if you will, and I'm being sarcastic here. You had the lack of a sense of urgency on that 4th quarter drive, the one that started with 8:53 left in the quarter. It took up about 5 minutes, 36 seconds, and the Giants had nothing to show for it. At the time, they were down by 2 scores, and they were just moseying along like they had all day. I'm like, where was the sense of urgency? It was almost as though they were afraid to give the ball back to Dallas because, the Giants defense was so banged up They probably figured, okay, we're going to eat up the clock. But, that contradicted, I thought, Brian Dable's coaching style, because Dable's not afraid to coach and be aggressive and take gambles. And now all of a sudden, there was no sense of urgency with the offense getting to the line and getting plays off. I just didn't get that, if I'm being honest with you. And then you had not getting Saquon free as a runner. I mean, Saquon Barkley, just real quick, I'll look at his stats. He had uh, 11 carries, 39 yards. That's an average of 3.5 yards per carry. This is what, two weeks in a row now that the Giants have not been able to get Saquon Barkley into the game, really into the game. There were no misdirections. I'm not sure what they were trying to do with him, but I saw a lot of vanilla stuff with them running Saquon Barkley, and it just wasn't working. It just was not working. Now, they did get Barkley 6 pass targets. He caught 4 for 13 yards. So what was with those matchups? So Barkley just a non-factor again in this game. Now, he is their best player on offense, and they couldn't figure out how to get him more involved in the game. What was interesting about this is they got Gary Brightwell, a seldom used running back, involved in the game. 5 carries, 31 yards. So that's 8 yards less than what Saquon Barkley had. Right. And Brightwell was actually ripping off some big runs here. His longest run was 15 yards. Saquon's longest run was 10 yards. Matt Breida got involved, 2 carries, 6 yards. Daniel Jones, 14 yards on 3 carries. So, just on first glance, the Giants just not very effective on offense, weren't able to move the ball. They had the missed opportunities, like I said, which I know upset Brian Dable. And the result was the Cowboys swept them. And just another disappointing game. The Giants, they had an opportunity. I thought, after watching the first half, I thought, oh, maybe this game's not going to be as bad as I thought it would be. Turned out to be as bad as I thought it would be. But for reasons not so much what I anticipated. And that was, I figured the defense would get carved up. I figured the offensive line would give up sacks galore. They were actually moving the ball, and then Dallas adjusted in the second half. I think they ran the ball a little bit more than they did throw it, and all of a sudden, it was a totally different ball game. So here we are, the Giants losing that game on missed opportunities, and they're just not good enough to miss a lot of opportunities the way they did in this one. So really disappointing showing by the Giants against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, coming up, we're going to talk about some numbers that this coaching staff better figure out how to get fixed, because they cannot keep going on like this. That's going to come up right after this break. Now, a word from our sponsor, Prize Picks. Hey, Giant fans, did you know playing daily fantasy sports based on player projections has never been easier when you visit prizepicks.com? Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go on to score more or less than their Prize Picks projections, you win up to 10 times the amount of your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada, and they offer projections on every sport. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, and Prize Picks offers safe and fast withdrawals. Download the Prize Picks app today or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up. Don't forget to enter that promo code LOCKEDON at sign up at prizepicks.com. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. And by the way, I hope everybody out there, despite the fact that the Giants lost, I hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving and got some time to spend with the family and friends and whatnot. So I hope that was a pleasant one for you. The Giants, disappointing, 28-20 loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Gosh, it seems every year the Cowboys, I think they've now swept the Giants in 5 of the last 6 seasons. So the Giants better figure out how to get their number back from Dallas because Dallas sure has their number. But speaking of numbers, let's talk about some glaring statistics that stood out in this loss. And I think we've got to start with third down. The Giants were 3 of 11 on third down conversions. So that's a 27.3 conversion rate. Dallas was 7 of 11, 63.6%. Dallas also had a lot of third and manageables. The Giants did not. They had quite a few third and forevers, if you will. So that was a big difference. The Giants just not getting it done on first and second down. And then in a couple drives or a couple instances, the Giants had penalties that just backed them up. And you're not going to win games when you can't convert on third down. You're not going to win games when you're going backwards instead of forward on the field. So that was one stat that really jumped out. I mentioned penalties. This officiating crew, for what it's worth, they threw 20. Well, actually, they threw more than 20 flags. 20 were accepted between the two teams. So the Cowboys had 13 penalties for 86 yards. The Giants 7 penalties for 66 yards. The difference being is again, the Giants weren't good enough to overcome those penalties, whereas Dallas was. So if you're going backwards and you're the Giants and you just don't have the horses, if you will, to cross the finish line, you're not going to win the game. And, we could sit here and we could say that the officiating crew this week was flag happy, which I thought they were in some cases. I mean, I'm not sure I agreed with all the calls, but the point is they were still called. And, the Giants just couldn't overcome them. So that's something that needs to be cleaned up. Let's see. Dallas. Oh, time of possession. The Giants only had the ball 25 minutes and 51 seconds. You ain't going to win, folks, if you don't dominate the time of possessions. I mean, it's rare. Dallas had it for 34:09, longer drives, and like I said, just the Giants with the lack of urgency that they showed in the fourth quarter, that was just a head scratcher for me, in my mind. So let's see. Here's another one. This is a stat that really jumps out at me. The Giants only converted 1 of 2 Dallas turnovers, both interceptions, into points. And the only points they got? 3 points. Field goals ain't gonna cut it, folks. They never have and they never will. And look, again, the Giants, they had opportunities. And this is what I'm talking about with missed opportunities. You're only able to convert 1 turnover into a field goal. And on that drive, on that field goal, if I'm not mistaken, they were going backwards. They had some penalties. And I think they had a sack on that drive as well. So, not good, man. You've got to convert on those gifts. I call them gifts. They're takeaways. And what was interesting is the Giants came into this game and they had 2 interceptions in 10 games, and they came up with 2 interceptions. So I thought, okay, maybe now things are going to be better and they're going to score points and whatnot. No, that was not the case. And, again, missed opportunities. That is the theme of this particular week's Giants game. 0 sacks. How about that stat, huh? 9 quarterback hits, but 0 sacks by the Giants defense. What's with the pass rush? Okay, so you could say, oh, they were banged up in the defensive secondary, so maybe the pass rush can get home. If they're hitting the quarterback, the pass rush is sort of getting home. Why not finish the job? I mean, I just don't understand it. Now, I know at times uh, they were just a split second too late. There were some instances where Dak Prescott got the ball out of his hand quickly, which would certainly help. But if you're getting that close to the quarterback, again, 9 hits, and you can't get a sack out of one of them, that's something's up there. And I don't know what, Again, I'd have to go back and look at the tape a second time, but that wasn't a very good stat at all. And oh, by the way, can we talk just to throw in a good thing here? Um, Kayvon Thibodeau had one assisted tackle, but 5 of the Giants' 9 quarterback hits. So that young man was affecting the game. He was helping with getting, close to the quarterback, but hopefully they figure out a way to start finishing off some of these sacks, these pass rushes, because, you know, you you get a sack, that's a loss of yardage. You're sending the opponent backwards, and the Giants just haven't done that enough. And considering that this is an aggressive defense, you would think there would be a lot more sacks than what the Giants have been able to record so far. So that's sort of a concern, I would think. Let me just see real quick some other stats for the Giants. Daniel Jones was 21 of 35, 228 yards. He absorbed 3 sacks. I think one of them came through Andrew Thomas, who, by the way, was still affected by his illness. Andrew Thomas was sick the latter half of the week and still not 100%. Not that that's an excuse. He was out there, but, Andrew Thomas having an off day, kind of like how Graham Gano had an off day the week before against Detroit with his illness. The Giants' leading receiver in terms of yardage was Darius Slayton. Caught 3 of 6 passes, 63 yards along of 44 yards. In terms of the catch percentage, Richie James 5 of 6, 41 yards. Saquon 4 of 6, 13 yards. Isaiah Hodgins 3 of 4, 31 yards. And then Brightwell had 2 catches, 2 catches, 18 yards. Other than that, nothing really kind of jumped out besides, like I said, that big 44-yard grab by Darius Slayton, who made a beautiful catch, by the way. Slayton made a contested catch, and, I don't know if he's necessarily the number one receiver right now in this team, because Kenny Golladay, by the way, and yeah, I'll say his name. David Turner's not here, so I will say his name. Kenny Golladay had 0 pass targets. I don't know how many snaps he was on the field yet because I don't have the snap counts, but 0 pass targets. I mean, if you're not going to get him on the field or get him pass targets, what are you doing? I just don't get it. So, all right, folks, coming up, how bad, if at all, did the Giants dent their postseason hopes? I've got some numbers for you. We will talk about that right after this. And now a word from our sponsor, SimpliSafe. Home burglaries and intruder breaches are unfortunately on the rise. Don't let the bad guys win. Build up your best defense with a customized system from SimpliSafe. Used and trusted by thousands of people, SimpliSafe is cutting-edge technology powered 24/7 by professional monitoring agents who always have your back. SimpliSafe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and will even dispatch the appropriate first responders to your residence, even if you're not home. So don't risk your family's safety. Put SimpliSafe's 24/7 professional monitoring and advanced response technology to work for you today. Visit simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL to customize your system at a special listener discount of 20%. Don't risk your family's safety. Put SimpliSafe's 24/7 professional monitoring and advanced response technology to work for you today. Visit simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL to customize your system at a special listener discount of 20%. Plus, get your first month of interactive monitoring for free. That's simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL for your customized 20% discounted security system and free month of interactive monitoring. Hey, Giant fans, thanks for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back, Giant fans, to the Locked On Giants podcast. Patricia Traina here with you. And again, I hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving despite the Giants' loss. I mean, that was kind of a downer. But really, I think a lot of us going into this game didn't think the Giants were going to pull it off. Looked like for a while we were going to be wrong, at least for the first half, and such was not the case. So here we are. And what does this loss mean now for the Giants' playoff hopes? Well, the first thing we've got to mention is because Dallas has swept the Giants now in the season series, excuse me, the Giants now have lost the head-to-head advantage, which Dallas holds, which simply means that if the two of them finish with the same record at the end of the year, Dallas gets the nod. All right. Also worth noting, the Giants are 0-2 against division foes so far. The two games coming against Dallas. If they want to get into the playoffs, folks, they got to win in the division. It's that simple. Now, they've got Washington on deck, then Philly, then Washington again, and then Philly at the end of the year. All right. They got to start winning some of these games. It's not going to be easy. Washington is starting to pick up. All right. They're hanging around Washington, and they're going to make a push for that third place spot in the NFC East. So the Giants got to start winning these games. Now, do they have enough resources to do it? That's another story. But if they want to make the playoffs this year, they got to start winning those games. They're not that far off. I think, I would feel better if they have 4 more wins, but 3 should get them in, assuming that Dallas stumbles somewhere along the line. But speaking of which, the website 538 puts the Giants' playoff chances at 47%. That's a 6% drop from the previous week. The Giants at one point, I think, were over 80% to make the playoffs. They have fallen big time. Now, here's the thing, folks. Realistically speaking, I don't think a lot of people thought that the Giants were going to be good enough to make the playoffs. I know I didn't. I predicted an 8-9 record, which is still in play, by the way. The injury situation, it's pretty bad. We saw that with the defensive backs, especially with, how some of these big passes were being completed with CD Lamb this week. The tight ends, the Giants had no answers for the tight ends of the Cowboys. And the offensive line, the Giants offensive line, not horrible, but they still need some work. So we can't keep using injuries as an excuse. I mean, they're there and they were a factor, but the bottom line is there were just too many missed opportunities. And this team is not good enough to overcome its mistakes. Is it short-staffed? Absolutely. Is it, a team that has a solid foundation? Absolutely. And speaking of, short staff, a lot of people are like, especially with the news coming out that Odell Beckham Jr. has supposedly set his visit schedule, and the Giants are first up. He should be in, I think, at some point late next week, according to Josina Anderson, CBS. I think she's a CBS Sports Insider, and she has, she's in the know when it comes to Odell. So I don't think Odell's going to be the answer. As I know a lot of people want him to come here. I don't think he's the answer, folks. I really don't. And I say that for 2 reasons. Number one, if you're the Giants and you're Joe Shane, you've got to look to the future. You've got to build this team the right way, and that is through the draft. The receiver group for next year is supposed to be pretty good in this draft. So try and do that. Try and get yourself some younger receivers, guys who are not coming off of 2 ACL injuries, guys who are not going to choke up your cap. The Giants don't have the money to do this. I mean, unless they go to Kenny Golladay and they restructure some of his contract, I don't see how the Giants are going to be able to afford Odell. I think Odell's visit with the Giants is pretty much a courtesy visit at this point. Maybe something designed to drive up his asking price, for all I know. So Odell's not going to be the answer, even if the Giants should somehow figure out a way to get him. The answer, folks, is, and I think we all kind of knew this at the start of the season. I think Joe Shane realized it at the start of the season. This team is not complete. It is a work in progress. The bad cap situation hamstrung them. They will have a better cap situation next year. They will have a lot of draft picks next year. They'll be able to build this team up the way they need to, the way they couldn't this year. They will be in year 2 of all the systems, on offense and defense. The coaching staff will have a better idea, having evaluated players, in live game scenarios of who could do what. Year 2 of this regime should be that much more promising. And if they don't make the playoffs next year, something's wrong. This year, had they made, if they make the playoffs, that's just gravy, folks. It's gravy on the turkey. So the Giants are headed in the right direction despite having lost 2 games in a row, their first 2-game losing streak under Dable. These are times when you're going to find out about what this team is made of, what this coaching staff is made of. You're going to see if there's resiliency in there that they can build on. So the coming week now, the Giants will be off, obviously, the weekend. They'll be back at work next Monday, and we will see how they respond because they do have another NFC East battle coming up with Washington that they've got to win if they want to go to the playoffs. So we will see how the Giants respond, and that's going to tell us a lot about this team as they continue to play out the 2022 season, the first under Brian Dable. All right, Giant fans, that is going to do it for us here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. I want to thank you for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, or if you're watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And as far as programming for us here at the LockedOn Giants podcast, I'm not sure if I have a show for you Monday. I'm still working on something, but depending on timing, I'm either going to have a show for you Monday or I'll start the new week on Tuesday. Tuesday, we'll do Twitter Tuesday. So if you want to get your questions in, you know what to do. The info's in the show notes. Wednesday, I'm hoping to have an interview for you. I'm working on a player interview, current player interview. So hopefully that will come to pass. Thursday will be the crossover show with Locked On Commanders host. I think I'm going to get David Harrison for that one. So I think he'll be the co-host that will join me. And then Friday, we'll do Locked On Giants Live with Tana and the dog. So make sure you keep it here on the Locked On Giants podcast for all things Giants. And be sure to check out my work on Giants Country, the written work over on Giants Country. Until next week, have a wonderful weekend. And again, thank you for tuning in. We will talk to you soon.